My brother Daniel was always the adventurous one. I was content with books and documentaries, but he needed the rush of the unknown. Last fall, he called me from Oregon, nearly yelling through the phone. "You need to come see this place." I'm serious, it's like something out of a horror story. He had been helping a friend clear an old hiking trail that hadn't been used since the 70s, deep inside the Ochoco National Forest. I brushed it off until he sent a photo. Faded wooden steps leading nowhere, half buried under moss and leaves. In the center of the clearing stood a large, rotting trapdoor, chained shut with rusted iron loops. Something about it felt wrong, but also unfinished. A week later, I flew in. When we reached the place, I immediately noticed how unnaturally quiet it was. No birds, no wind. Even the air felt heavier. The trapdoor was bigger than I expected, nearly 6 feet wide, its edges lined with carvings I didn't recognize. Not artistic, more like warnings. Daniel was too eager to care. He said he'd already cut the chains the day before, but hadn't opened it yet. "I wanted to wait for you," he grinned. That night, we camped nearby. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing. Not snoring or wind, but breathing, coming from the direction of the trapdoor. Slow, steady, rhythmic, like something waiting just below us. I thought I was dreaming, until Daniel whispered, "You hear it too." We didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I told him we should leave it alone. He laughed, but something in his eyes had changed. He wasn't sleeping well, kept looking over his shoulder. Said he heard whispers when he was alone. On the third day, he vanished, just like that. I went to get firewood, and when I came back, only his boots were there, placed neatly next to the trapdoor, which was now slightly open. I didn't look inside. I couldn't. I ran. And I've never gone back. People don't believe me, of course. They say he probably got lost. But he didn't take his bag or his wallet. And someone, or something, opened that trapdoor. I've spent months trying to forget, but sometimes I still hear that breathing in my dreams. And once, just once, I heard it from my basement. What would you have done in my place? Would you have opened the trapdoor? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear how you would have handled it. I didn't report Daniel's disappearance right away. I know how that sounds. But when you've seen what I saw, felt what I felt, you don't just go to the police and say, "My brother was taken by something breathing under a trap door in the woods." I drove for 3 hours without stopping, shaking, replaying every moment in my mind. The trap door had been cracked open, just enough to let something slip through, or someone. The way his boots were arranged still haunts me. It felt like a message, like he'd left them there deliberately, or worse, like something else had. Back in town, I tried to tell one of the rangers at the station, but I couldn't find the words. I left out the breathing, the carvings. I simply said my brother had gone missing in the forest. They nodded solemnly, as if this wasn't the first time. "That area's been off limits for years," one said. "Strange ground. People get turned around. You sure you were supposed to be there?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That something in that forest watches you from below, that I'd felt it? I returned to the hotel and tried to sleep, but every creak of the floor, every whisper of the air conditioning made my skin crawl. I kept thinking of the carvings around the trapdoor. The symbols had looked ancient, sharp, angular, almost violent, in their pattern. I took out my phone and zoomed into the photo Daniel had sent. One symbol repeated itself around the hinges. A circle with jagged lines erupting outward, like rays or claws. I searched for hours online, trying to match it. I found nothing in any modern database, but deep in a thread on an occult forum, someone had posted something similar. A user named Adrian claimed it was a protective seal, used not to guard a treasure, but to bind something in place, something that shouldn't be allowed to roam. My blood turned cold. The post was years old. The user hadn't been active since 2016, but I messaged anyway. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the truth was, I needed answers. The next night, my hotel room door clicked softly. I froze. I hadn't ordered anything. I crept to the peephole and saw nothing but darkness, no hallway, no lights, just black. I blinked, and then movement. Something passed across it slowly. Breathing. Again, that same rhythmic inhale, exhale. I stumbled back and locked the door 3 times. The next morning, I checked out without looking back. I started driving home across state lines, thinking if I could just get far enough, the feeling would fade. But it hasn't. Not really. Because this story didn't end in the woods. Something followed me. And no matter how far I drive, I feel like it's getting closer. Back home in Colorado, I tried to piece my life back together, but everything felt slightly off, as if the forest had left a residue inside me. It began with small things. The lights in my apartment flickering at exactly 2:30 a.m. The heating system exhaling in slow, deliberate bursts that mimicked the breathing we heard that night. My cat, normally fearless, refused to enter the hallway near the basement door. She'd sit at the edge, low to the ground, staring into the shadows. Growling softly, I started hearing noises from the basement. Soft, almost wet sounds, like something shifting beneath the floorboards. One night, I forced myself to go down there, flashlight in hand. I had to know it was all in my head. The air was stale and damp. Nothing seemed out of place until I noticed a faint trail of moisture leading from the far corner to the old boiler, which hadn't worked in over a year. When I knelt to look closer, I saw a symbol scratched into the concrete behind it, a perfect circle with jagged lines radiating outward, the same one from the trapdoor. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. I didn't even think it was there before. My hands trembled as I reached for it, almost expecting it to vanish like a dream. But the concrete was real, and the carving was deep, as if gouged by something strong. That same night, I received a reply to my forum message. User Adrian was back. The message was short. You opened something. It never stays in one place. Burn what you found, and if it's marked your home, leave now. I read the message over and over again, heart pounding. What had followed me home? I deleted the message and tried to sleep, but the sound started. Again, breathing not from the basement this time, but from inside my closet. Slow, heavy, unmistakable. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Instead, I packed a bag that night and drove to a motel on the edge of town. I slept in the car with the engine running. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw someone standing in front of my apartment building. A tall, still figure, backlit by the streetlight, unmoving, watching. I didn't go back the next day, or the next. Eventually, I broke the lease and moved across the city. I chose a high-rise with no basement. I thought it was over. But a week later, I got a package. No return address. Inside, wrapped in old newspaper, was Daniel's phone, still charged. The wallpaper hadn't changed. It was a photo of the trapdoor taken from above. But now, something was visible in the crack. A hand, pale, long-fingered, not quite human, reaching out. And suddenly I realized Daniel didn't vanish. He was taken, and whatever took him isn't bound to that forest anymore. It's looking for something, or someone, and it knows where I live. I stared at Daniel's phone for hours, afraid to unlock it, afraid of what I might find. Eventually, I opened the gallery. Most of the photos were from our hiking trip. Trees, trails, blurry selfies. But buried between them were a series of shots I'd never seen before. Close-ups of the carvings around the trapdoor, dirt-covered symbols etched into tree bark. One image showed a mound in the ground nearby, like a grave, freshly disturbed. The final photo was taken at night, the timestamp confirming it had been captured mere minutes before he vanished. It showed the trapdoor slightly ajar, the same pale hand reaching out. But this time, the fingers were curled, as if gripping the edge to pull something up. I dropped the phone. The air around me felt charged, thick. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, my own heartbeat. That night, I dreamt of the forest again. I stood above the trapdoor, unable to move. Something beneath it whispered my name in a voice that sounded like Daniel's, but stretched, as if run through static. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My apartment smelled of damp earth. The carpet near the front door was soaked, though no rain had fallen. I went to the building's maintenance team the next morning. They said no leaks had been reported. I knew better. I started digging into old maps, trying to locate that exact clearing. I found no mention of a structure ever being built there. But in a 1942 topographical survey, the area was labeled with a warning in faded ink. Unstable ground, do not excavate. Nothing more, no explanation. I returned to the forum and searched trapdoor, forest, breathing. A thread from 2009 surfaced, mostly ignored. A user named Wendigo13 described an encounter in a forest in Canada, finding a hatch in the ground, hearing something breathe at night, then losing time. He wrote, I woke up 40 miles away, no shoes, no idea how I got there. I had a symbol carved into my shoulder. I burned it off. The post ended abruptly. His account was deleted the next day. I checked my own body in the mirror. Nothing. But I couldn't shake the idea that something had marked me, just not in ways I could see. I tried to record the sounds at night, set up my phone, left it running. The next morning there was static, low and pulsing. But at exactly 2:37 a.m., the static cleared for 2 seconds. I played it over and over. In that moment of silence, a voice spoke, "Let me in." It wasn't Daniel's voice. It wasn't even human. I smashed the phone. I bought candles, salt, whatever superstitious protections I could find online. I barely slept. Every night I saw the same dream, the hand reaching out, the voice repeating my name, the feeling of something ancient crawling up from the dark. The breathing was louder now. Sometimes I thought I heard it during the day. It followed me to work, to the store, to places it had no right to be. I knew I couldn't live like this. I had to go back. I had to seal it, or destroy it, or maybe just face whatever was waiting for me under that trapdoor. I waited until the end of October to return, half hoping the cold would somehow dull the presence I'd felt, that maybe the trapdoor would be buried under snow or swallowed by the forest itself. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that easy. The path back wasn't marked. I had to rely on Daniel's photos and my own fractured memories. The deeper I went, the more unnatural everything became. Trees were bent at strange angles, bark slashed with those same symbols, and silence pressed in like a vacuum. Even the ground felt softer, like stepping on lungs instead of soil. I reached the clearing near dusk. The trapdoor was exactly where we'd left it, but it was no longer just ajar. It was wide open. The surrounding earth had receded, forming a circular depression as if the forest itself was retreating from what lay beneath. Cold air rose from the opening, and with it, the slow, deliberate breathing I had come to dread. It was louder now, deeper, and it didn't stop when I approached. It responded to me, each breath quickening slightly as though excited. I circled it slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand, and for the first time, I saw what was inside. A spiral staircase carved from stone, descending into blackness. No walls, just a shaft of pure dark. I thought of Daniel, of the symbols, the dreams, the voice on the recording. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but something stronger pulled me forward. I descended the first few steps. The air grew colder, heavier, tasting of rust and mold. The breathing was below me now, echoing faintly but steadily, like the heartbeat of a buried beast. 20 steps in, I reached a landing, a crude chamber carved into the earth, and on the opposite wall, a figure stood, not moving, not breathing. A man, thin, dirt-caked and still. His head tilted slightly when my light found him. It was Daniel. His eyes were wrong, black where there should have been white, gleaming like obsidian. His mouth opened, too wide, jaw cracking. But the voice that came out wasn't his. "It waits for you," it rasped. "It learned your name." I stumbled back, nearly slipping down the stairs. He didn't follow, just watched, still smiling with that mouth that wasn't his. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, scratched and covered in leaves as if it had sat there for months. The world outside felt different, quiet, but not in a peaceful way. More like the moment before a storm. I drove through the night, never once checking the rearview mirror. I thought I'd left it behind, sealed it by not descending further. But a week later, I found a symbol carved into the wall of my new apartment. The same jagged circle. It wasn't there before, the paint was fresh, and then the breathing returned. Not from below, but from within the walls. Closer now, and constant. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. I just wait for it to stop. But it doesn't, it never stops. I started documenting everything, not for others, but for myself, to hold on to some thread of sanity. I kept a notebook by my bed, logging the times I heard it, the patterns of the breathing, even the temperature shifts. But it wasn't just the sound anymore. Objects began to move slightly during the night, books off the shelf, doors left ajar, scratches appearing on the inside of the window glass as if something had pressed against it from within. I lived on the 4th floor. There was no balcony. Then came the dreams, more vivid, more specific. I was no longer just in the forest. I was beneath it, deep in some ancient, sprawling network of tunnels. The walls pulsed like flesh, and everywhere. I stepped, I felt watched. At the center of it all was a door, not wood, but stone, heavy and groaning, sealed with dozens of those jagged symbols. Behind it, the breathing thundered like a beast, slumbering beneath the skin of the world. And, always, Daniel stood beside it, whispering, "You brought it back. You gave it a name." I began waking with dirt under my fingernails. Once I found pine needles in my bed. I hadn't left the apartment in days. I reached back out to the forum, desperate for anything, anyone who had experienced something similar. Most responses were mockery. But then one private message arrived, no name, just a sentence. You were supposed to close it, not look inside. Attached was a file, an old newspaper clipping from 1965. Headline, "Local boys missing near Ochoko Forest. Only boots found near sinkhole." The photo was black and white, but the setting was unmistakable. Same clearing, same trapdoor. Even the position of the boots matched. It had happened before, and I had walked into it like a fool. I started calling libraries, hunting through public records, anything that mentioned disappearances in the region. Patterns emerged. Every 20 to 25 years, someone vanished under strange circumstances, always near that area. No bodies, no traces. Just personal items left behind. Shoes, backpacks. One case from 1987 mentioned a survivor, a woman who was found wandering a highway 30 miles away, barefoot and speaking in an unknown language. She was committed, her medical records sealed. The breathing grew stronger after that. Now it came from every direction, vibrating through the walls like sonar. One night I returned from the grocery store and found my front door open. Inside, nothing was missing, but someone had scrawled a message across the bathroom mirror in what looked like charcoal. "He is almost through." That same night, I saw Daniel again, on the stairwell, 2 floors below mine. He looked normal at first, but his eyes didn't blink. His head followed me as I passed, unmoving. When I turned to confront him, he was gone, but the floor was damp where he'd stood. Not water, soil. I checked the mirror message again, thinking maybe it had been a prank, a hallucination. But beneath the writing, etched faintly into the glass, was the same circle with jagged lines, and in the center of it, a vertical eye, half open, watching, waiting. I don't know how much longer I have before it fully crosses over, but I can feel It every night just behind the drywall, breathing, learning, becoming. I stopped pretending my life was still my own. The breathing became a rhythm in my bones, an undercurrent to every waking moment. I could no longer tell where my thoughts ended and its presence began. But even as I unraveled, some primal instinct told me there had to be a way to sever the bond, if only I understood what I was dealing with. I went back to the name from the forum, Aedrin. After hours of dead ends, I found an archived site, a defunct digital journal titled Thresholds of Stone. There, buried among grainy scanned pages and cryptic annotations, was an entry titled The One Who Waits Beneath, the Ochoko Binding. My breath caught. It spoke of an entity believed to predate written language, something sealed not by human hands, but by imitation. Generations had passed down a ritual through mimicry alone, symbols carved into stone, patterns of salt and bone, a name never spoken aloud. The entry warned that contact through sound, especially breath, could create a tether. It described the entity as echo-born, meaning it existed partially through repetition, memory, and fear. Every time someone remembered it, every time the story was told, it grew stronger. Worse, if someone opened the seal knowingly, believing in the legend, the entity would mark that person as a host of passage, a vessel. I wasn't just haunted. I was being hollowed, prepared. The journal included one final note. If the tether cannot be broken within 13 cycles of the moon, the host will descend, by will or force. I counted. From the night Daniel disappeared to now, it had been nearly 13 months. I knew what I had to do. I returned to the clearing for the last time, this time carrying everything I could gather: salt, iron nails, old bones scavenged from butcher shops, the last page of Adrian's ritual printed and folded in my coat. The forest welcomed me with silence again, no birds, no wind. The clearing was somehow wider, as if the land had been eroded outward by the presence beneath. The trapdoor lay open, like a wound. I circled it, laying the salt and iron, carving the seal into the trees around the perimeter. Then I knelt, bones in hand, and began the incantation. It wasn't in a language I recognized, but the sounds came naturally, as if they'd been waiting in my throat all along. Halfway through, the air thickened. The ground beneath me trembled. From within the shaft came a sound I will never forget. Not just breathing, but speech. Low and liquid, it mimicked Daniel's voice. "You were always going to come back," it said. "You want to see? Let me show you." I pressed on, voice breaking. The trapdoor slammed shut on its own with a quake that knocked me backward. A blast of air surged from the earth, hot and metallic. I thought I'd won. I thought it was sealed. But as I staggered to my feet, I saw the symbols I had carved begin to twist on their own, morphing into something else, something older. And beneath my feet, the ground whispered, "Too late." The forest began to darken, not with night, but with something spreading from below, like ink blooming under paper. I ran. I left everything behind. When I reached my car, there were footprints. In the mud, bare, long-toed, not mine, not Daniel's, and leading toward the trapdoor. I returned to the city, but it no longer felt like home. Everything had shifted. Streetlights flickered when I passed. Reflections in shop windows lingered a heartbeat too long. And strangers glanced at me with expressions just shy of recognition, like they sensed something wrong clinging to me. I kept the curtains closed, unplugged my electronics, and stopped using mirrors. Every time I caught my own reflection, I swore it moved a fraction of a second too slow. My voice sounded unfamiliar. On recordings, my dreams were no longer dreams, they were memories, but not mine. I saw through eyes that weren't human, moving through tunnels that pulsed and breathed like flesh. I watched people from the shadows, mimicking their gestures, learning their words. At some point, I stopped waking up with certainty that I was still myself. Then the symbols began to appear again. On my skin, not carved but under it, raised like old burns, emerging slowly on my chest, across my arms, always the same jagged circle, and always while I slept. I tried burning them off, cutting into the skin. They came back deeper, darker. I wasn't healing anymore, I was transforming. I knew I couldn't be the only one. If it had marked others before me, if it came through every generation, then maybe someone had survived it or escaped it. I returned to the forum. My old messages were gone, deleted. The user, Adrian, was no longer listed. But a new thread had appeared titled, "He's in the Walls Now," posted from an anonymous account. It described everything: the trapdoor, the breathing, the basement sounds, the dreams. The final line read, "We are not victims, we are doors." The thread vanished minutes after I saw it. That phrase echoed in my head until it no longer felt like metaphor. I was becoming an opening, a passageway. At night I began hearing footsteps in my apartment, but never above or below, always from the inside of the walls. Once, I awoke to my bedroom door open and a shadow stretched impossibly long across the floor, even though the lights were off. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The shadow slowly slid back into the hallway like something reconsidering. The next morning, I received a package. No return label, no markings. Inside was an audio cassette, unlabeled, brittle with age. I had no cassette player, but something compelled me to buy one. I listened in the dead of night, static at first, then a voice faint but clear. "You made a mistake. He's no longer waiting beneath. He's learning to walk upright." The tape ended with a sound I can only describe as wet footsteps, slow, uneven, approaching. I unplugged the player. It kept spinning. The next morning, my neighbor across the hall was found dead. No signs of struggle, no wounds, just gone. Eyes wide open, every bone in his body turned to powder. The police said it was a medical anomaly. I knew better. It was testing proximity, testing how close it could come. Every night now, the breathing grows louder. It's synchronized with mine. It waits until I exhale before it inhales, as if learning the rhythm of my lungs. My chest aches constantly. Sometimes I swear I can feel a second heartbeat. And last night, when I looked in the mirror for the first time in weeks, something else looked back, not fully, but enough, and it was smiling. I've stopped referring to myself in the first person. It no longer feels accurate. There are memories in my head that don't belong to me, visions of sunless caverns, of creatures that never learned to stand but remembered how to reach. I wake up with mud beneath my fingernails and voices echoing in languages I've never studied, speaking in cadence, not conversation, rituals whispered like lullabies into my skull. I tried recording myself sleeping. In one video, I stood for 6 hours in the center of the room, unmoving. At dawn, I smiled at the camera, then collapsed. I don't remember rising. I don't remember anything between midnight and morning. The entity, whatever it is, doesn't possess. It merges. I've begun seeing others on the subway, in empty parking lots, in gas station mirrors, people marked like me, moving slightly out of sync with the world, blinking too slow, eyes tracing patterns in the air as if reading invisible text. One woman crossed herself backward before entering a bus. A man dragged his foot behind him, his shadow bending in the wrong direction under streetlight. We don't speak. We recognize. We breathe together. The symbols have now formed a full ring around my sternum, pulsing faintly when I get too close to electronics. My phone won't turn on anymore. Screens crack when I touch them. And last night, when I passed a mirror in the hallway, my reflection stayed behind. Watching, I no longer live alone. I can feel it pacing inside me, thinking, remembering, preparing. It doesn't need the trapdoor anymore. I was the key. I opened it. I am it. Sometimes I catch myself speaking aloud in the voice that isn't mine. I don't know who I'm talking to. or what I'm promising. There's something spreading now, and I know others have heard it. Reports on the news of unexplained disappearances. A town in Utah with 6 missing children and no leads. A man in Montana found 60 miles from home, blind and muttering about a tunnel filled with mouths that never close. A basement in New Jersey where no sound can be recorded. Only silence, thick and impenetrable. This thing, this breath-born entity is no longer confined. It has bodies now. It has names. It doesn't need fear to survive, only attention, memory, and I've given it both. The forum where it started is gone. The journal entries have vanished. My notebooks have turned to ash without burning. It's erasing its trail, making itself legend, untouchable. I've started to forget Daniel's face, but I remember the sound of his voice the moment before he disappeared, like he was trying to warn me or apologize. I think I understand now. He didn't vanish. He became the first echo, and I am becoming the next. Tonight, I will go back one last time. Not to seal it, not to fight it, but to see, to descend, because the breathing no longer comes from beneath me. It comes from within. I arrived at the clearing before sunrise. There was no fog, no birdsong, only a hollow stillness, as if the world was holding its breath. The trapdoor was gone. In its place, a smooth, flat patch of earth, untouched, as if no one had ever stepped there. But I remembered. My body remembered. The symbols on my chest burned as I approached, and without thinking, I knelt and pressed my palms to the soil. It yielded. Slowly, soundlessly, the ground split like skin parting along an old scar. Beneath it, the spiral staircase waited, carved from obsidian, slick with condensation, pulsing faintly with a red glow that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I didn't hesitate. I descended. With every step, my breath aligned with something ancient, my lungs expanding in rhythm with the slow, colossal inhale rising from below. The air became thicker, almost liquid. Walls began to shift, the spiral becoming a tunnel, the tunnel becoming a throat. I walked through something alive. My hands brushed walls that twitched and quivered as if reacting to my presence. And then, at the end, a door, massive, seamless, covered in symbols, most I had seen before, some I hadn't. In the center, a circle with jagged lines. The eye, open now, watching. I reached out, and the door receded without touch, revealing an endless chamber of darkness, not absence, but concentration. A presence that had waited patiently for generations, leaking only enough of itself to find a voice, a vessel, a path. I was all three. And as I stepped inside, I saw them, others, floating in the dark, not dead, not dreaming. Their eyes flickered, pulsing with red light. They turned toward me in unison, lips moving in silence. I could not hear the words. I understood them. A welcome, an initiation, an invitation. I knelt, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, the breathing stopped. A stillness settled, vast and absolute. Then the voice came, not through air, but through me. It is done. And in that moment I ceased to be. I became the breath, the memory, the echo in the earth. I am the rhythm beneath the roots, the whisper in the drywall, the breath that aligns with yours at night. I did not return. There is no returning. But if you ever hear it, if you ever stand alone in the woods and feel something watching, or wake up at 2:30 a.m. to the sound of someone breathing just behind your bedroom wall, don't speak, don't move, don't remember, because once you do, it will know your name.